The pension obligation bonds, again, we see this information on a regular basis. The really good news here is that the final payment for this pension obligation bond will be made in June of next year, and that'll free up about $1.3 million in the general fund. So it'll be really nice to see that final payment being made. The other post-employment benefits, those are benefits that are given to retirees for various forms of health care at various levels, depending on when they were hired. I will say that the city annually makes 100% of the required contribution. As we do, we make 100% of all of the CalPERS payments. And this year, we will have to do a new actuarial for the cost of that accrued liability. So we'll be seeing some numbers change in that area. So finally then, just wrapping up, we're still fiscally sound. We are financially responsible. And this year, for the first time since I've been here, though, our reserves were funded at the minimum level. And in the past, they had been funded at the maximum level. And so we have some challenges that we have to face. We've been facing these challenges for a while. But we know already, moving into the new budget cycle, that we have some contract increases with Orange County Fire Authority. The council has an ad hoc committee that's looking at potential options for fire service in the city. And we also have increased CalPERS costs. Everybody in the state has increased CalPERS costs, and these are the two primary expense drivers in the city. So, last year we started at about $600,000 or $700,000 behind the 8 ball when we put the budget together, and we're looking at about those same numbers this year. Every member of the Seal Beach team continues to control costs where we can, ensuring that the strategic plan goals are met and that the service delivery levels meet the expectations of the community. From a budgetary perspective, I believe that the current revenue budget can be achieved and that expenditures will be below budget. But this year, I'm going to add some words of caution, and that's where I talk a little bit more about the unknowns of the tax reform that's come through. We've already seen some changes. Yes, employees have seen increases in their paychecks because the payroll tax, the taxing structure went down. But we don't know what the limitations on the write-offs are, we don't know what impact the limitations on the write-offs for property taxes will have on property values in the city. I've talked to some realtors who think there might be no change, and I've talked to some realtors who think that the property values may decline between 6 and 10%. We just don't know. It's too early really to tell into the new year about that, but that's something that we have to be very mindful of because property tax is the largest source of revenue in the city. And right now, we're looking at the end of the fiscal year and we're anticipating that the property tax revenue will be higher than budget, but I could come back to you with a very different story in the next couple of months if we don't see those values continue to, maybe not even rise, but at least if they stay level, then we'll be fine. But if we start to see those values decline, then we have to have a different kind of a solution for how we might make up for the budget shortfall in the next fiscal year. And then just, the last comment, we know the retirement costs are increasing, and city manager was recently at a League of California Cities forum where they talked about them. CalPERS is reaching out to the entities across the state to come and talk to them. And those communications have actually started to make a difference to some, in some respects, CalPERS is listening, but there's challenges. There's challenges that we're going to have to face as we go from the current 7.5% down to a 7% discount rate. Those are going to have significant cost increases. And there's some studies out there that indicate that the CalPERS costs for miscellaneous might be as high as 30% in the next, I believe, 7 to 10 years, and the CalPERS costs for public safety might be as high as 70% in the next 10 years. Well, if you add those two numbers together, that's 100%, which means, every dollar is going to be used to pay for retirement. So CalPERS is really going to have to put some, sharpen the pencil point and come up with some solutions. Part of it is they change the amortization, they change the mortality, and they're dropping the discount rate. And so all of those things combined are still sort of creating this perfect storm of the cost increases that are expecting to be seeing over the next, I'm pretty sure, 5 to 7 years. I have faith in the system. I believe that CalPERS is well managed. I believe that they're trying to fix some challenges that have been occurring over the long run. And I believe, once again, that the city managers' voices will be heard, and they'll do something to help us address the volatility in the costs. But I'm not on their board, and I don't, follow the meetings. I'm not 100% sure where they're going. But the louder we can talk to them, the more likely they will listen and help us come up with some solutions. And with that, Rosie Note, I'm done, and I'll be happy to answer any other questions.
Okay, any council comments at this time? To my right? To my left? Any more?
Are we working on a 3 to 5 year plan out?
Yes, we have hired our financial advisor, Fieldman Rollap, and I've seen a rough draft of the plan, and we had a conversation, so we do have a model in place that we should be able to deploy during this next budget cycle.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, this time we'll have oral communications. At this time, members of the public may address the council regarding any items within the subject matter jurisdiction of the City Council. Pursuant to the Brown Act, the council cannot discuss or take action on any items not on the agenda unless authorized by law. Matters not on the agenda may, at the council's discretion, be referred to the city manager and placed on a future agenda. Those members of the public wishing to speak are asked to come forward to the microphone and state their name for the record. All speakers will be limited to a period of 5 minutes. Any documents for review should be presented to the city clerk for distribution. Good
Hi,
evening.
my name is Mary Trump. I live in Leisure World. I'm here to talk about Community Choice Energy. Community Choice Energy is a public-private partnership between the city and utility. It brings power purchasing under local control. The utility continues to deliver power over the power lines. Customers have the choice over what type of power to use.
Can you speak into the microphone a little bit, please? Thank
Okay,
you.
sorry.
Nice and
Okay.
loud, thank you.
Okay. How Community Choice Energy works. The source will be Community Choice Energy, buying and building electricity supply. The delivery will be the utility, delivering energy, maintaining lines, and billing customers, I mean. The customer will be you, benefiting from affordable rates, local control, and cleaner energy. The downsides of the current system. Monopoly on power delivery, artificially elevated pricing. Utilities have little incentive to operate efficiently. Dependence on single electric provider during peak periods leads to less resiliency and increased power outages. Reliance on monolithic utility creates vulnerability during natural disasters. The benefits of community choice energy. There's local control, freedom of choice of customers, including the choice to opt out, competition in the marketplace, driving prices down, local jobs and economic development, improved air quality, promoting public health, self-supporting, not government subsidized, provides potential cost savings for businesses. How do we pay for community choice energy? It's revenue-based, not government subsidized. Self-supporting from existing revenue stream, the electricity bills. Current electricity rates used to pay providers are redirected to the community choice energy providers through the city. So what is next? Approval of feasibility study to ensure due diligence on financial costs and long-term benefits for customers, either individually or partnered with another city or cities, as well as collection of information from cities and counties that have already implemented community choice energy. There's also going to be a public event on community choice energy organized by OC Clean Power at UC Irvine, which will consolidate data in informational panels and workshops featuring community choice energy experts from around the state. This event is April the 11th, 2018. It's titled Understanding Community Choice Energy and Its Opportunities. It's a half-day guide for Orange County, cities, and clean energy shareholders. It's from 10 a.m. to 11 p.m. at UCI Irvine Student Center. And I've supplied flyers for this event for the city clerk. Thank you very much.
Next.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Joyce Ross Parquet, Old Town Seal Beach, owner of multiple units like others in town. When will, you're a state employee and you know about the legal system, so how long do you think you can push back what the state of California wants done for people that own units? How long do you think you can push it back? They have new codes this year already, and you haven't even done anything for the codes of a year ago. How can you all sit up there and push it back? It's got to be answered some way or another because they've come up with new codes. So last time I was here, I was going back over things that didn't happen in this city to make it better. So I didn't get to the pensions and I didn't get to Main Street. So how many times did I come down here and complain about the pavers in front of Nick's? And you gave her a pay raise when I asked you not to? And then that lady fell. So my next question is not on anything up there. How much is our insurance cost gone up for slip and fall? Slip and fall. How much has our insurance gone up for other items like we hear about in Sacramento and up in Washington? Seems that every city has one. The other cost, the hidden cost that nobody wants to talk about. Why isn't that insurance cost a slip and fall here? The new California Leisure World has no houses. The houses are down here and in Surfside that are of value, making everybody else's more valuable too. Leisure World has co-ops. Remember when they didn't pay the taxes and they came down here and asked us to pay the taxes? You weren't here, Mayor. So, well, we didn't pay their taxes. They had to pay them because they were late, but they were not as much as what happened to the eaves. They've been sold a couple different times. How much is that taxes? The broker sitting over there should know. How much are the taxes for the eaves? They've been sold a couple different times. How much are the beachfront properties going for? See, the pier and the beach and all of us that live in units and the people that will pay to live on the beachfront make this city. And Main Street, we have vacancies on Main Street. Businesses are not shoving in here. We have vacancies. Have you noticed? And then, how did an insurance company get on Main Street? Tell me about the retail. Somebody show me the retail from an insurance company. So I'm over, I went on the internet, I couldn't see anything up Thursday, so I went to the library. And I go through all of your checks, and I get to the bottom to the old redevelopment agency. And there are payments out there that I thought don't belong in there. Are you trying to hide something?
You have 1 minute.
I have 1 minute. So, some of the checks were paid twice. And why are we paying a conference fee for Mrs. Beatley, the treasurer? And you know what somebody else asked me to find out? Do either one of you teach at Cal State Long Beach and we pay the parking fees for you to teach? And who came up with this theory that there was going to be a 3-story condo built at Rivers Inn? There's not going to be any 3-story condo. There's not going to be an increase in the yard space. It's just going to be a new restaurant. And you promised to close it at 9 o'clock, like now. And how much money did you get when the DWP was
Your
sold?
time's up.
How much money? And how much more is coming? Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. My name is Jim Brady, and I want to address the rising crime rate in Seal Beach. I think that most informed people would agree that the two major reasons for the increase is, one, we need more police officers on the street, and second, the passage of Propositions 47, 57, and AB 109. I will address the need for more police officers at another time since I've got limited time. I want to talk and address the Prop 47, 57, and AB 109. By the way, the genesis of the two initiatives and the Assembly bill was because the California Supreme Court told Jerry Brown that they were going to hold him in contempt if he didn't reduce the number of prisoners in prisons. So instead of building more prisons, they decided to release him and put him back into society. Just as a quick refresher, AB 109 was passed by the state legislature and signed by Jerry Brown in 2011. It eliminated return to prison for parole violators. So when somebody violated their parole, they don't go back to prison like they used to do. And basically, they don't even go in front of a judge anymore. They go into jail for a couple of days, and then they're released back on the street. They have to commit a new crime that qualifies them to go to prison before they go back. Proposition 47 was passed by voters in 2014. It reduced some felonies to misdemeanors, things like drugs, shoplifting, bad checks, forgery, sex trafficking of a child, rape of unconscious persons, assault with a deadly weapon, domestic violence, serial thefts, assault on a police officer, and it also reduced the ability for the police to collect DNA samples. When this initiative was going around in the proposition, the proponents of it called it the Safe Neighborhoods and School Act. It doesn't even come close to that. Proposition 57 was passed by voters in 2016. It released nonviolent offenders, people like rape by drugs, assault with a deadly weapon, drive-by shootings, exploding a bomb to injure people. Those are all nonviolent under the proposition. And you may have read recently or heard that on last Friday that a Sacramento judge ruled that under Prop 57 that the language is not going to keep sex offenders in prison, and there's going to be probably in a very short future about 10,000 that are going to be released into California. I don't know how many of them will be down here, but they're going to be released. So this is happening every day that we have. So obviously, the passage of the legislation and propositions had negative unintended consequences. And as a result, the police are handicapped when dealing with suspects. Parole violators spend a few days in jail and then released. Concerning the felonies that were reduced to misdemeanors, the police can only issue a ticket and just like a traffic citation, and release the perpetrator right there at the scene to go right back into the community. The crime rate is rising in California and Seal Beach, and we need to put criminals back into jail. Now, over the years, there's been numerous pieces of legislation that have been introduced in Sacramento.
You have 1 minute.
Okay. In Sacramento, and they've died. They haven't been able to fix these, so we need to do something to fix the propositions and the assembly bill. And what's happened is that there has been a group of people within the state of California that have put together an initiative. We're trying to get a proposition to be put onto the ballot in November 2018. And the initiative is called Reducing Crime and Keeping California Safe Act of 2018. And by the way, not only is crime rate going up, we're not even counting the same crime rate that we used to count, because a lot of the crimes that have been reduced to misdemeanors are no longer counted as Part 1 crimes, and crime rate is still going up. I just wanted to let the people of Seal Beach be aware of this particular initiative. I would like the city of Seal Beach to get with other cities, with the police departments, and with the DA's offices, and support this initiative. If anybody wants to sign one at the conclusion of the council meeting, I've got petitions with me. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Good evening, Robert Goldberg, Seal Beach. I have some questions for staff on the budget presentation. If I could see slide 13. Ms. Beatley, could you put slide 13 up for me? What I'm trying to, my questions are going to be focused on one issue, and that is that with the budget, we had an expected amount of revenue and an expected amount of expenditures. And I'm trying to nail down, I'm trying to understand how much they're up or down. And I'm not quite clear, but perhaps in looking at the slide, we might be able to get a little clarity. The slide 13 that I wanted to look at had to do with general fund revenue. And the statement was made, and the slide states that revenue is increased or expected to be increased about $880,000 compared to the prior year. Okay, that's not the question I'm interested in. That's not what we should be interested in. It's not what it did compared to the prior year. It's what is it up or down versus the budget for this year. That's what I'm trying to get at. Because for this year, for example, with the general fund revenue, we expected it to go up $500,000. So if it's going up 800 and I'm rounding 880,000, I mean, that is good. But that means that the net revenue is up maybe 280,000 compared to what we thought. Okay, that's the way I would interpret this. What's been presented, that we're probably going to have 280,000 more than what we thought in the budget. Okay. The next slide is the general fund expense review, slide 16, which is on the next page of the handout. So this is the other side, and here we have a statement that the overall expenses have gone up 341,000 compared to last year. Well, how much did we think they were going to go up? Looking at the budget, and I'm assuming this is applying to non-CIP, just the operating expenses of the general fund. So just looking at forget the projects, just the operating expenses. We are expecting the costs to go up 6,000, and it looks like the costs are going up 341,000. So our expenses, I would interpret this that our operating expenses are going up about 335,000 more than we thought. So it seems that our operating expenses are going up about 335. Our income, I think I said 280 on that. So it's about a wash. I mean, these are just projections. So the way I would interpret this is overall, the increased revenue is being pretty much balanced by increased expenses, and it's pretty much a wash. That's the way I would interpret that. Changing subjects, going to the parking management contracts, the 4 contracts that are on your agenda tonight, and I know we're going to have a long discussion on that. And I gave you a couple pages of questions, but stepping back, trying to see the forest through the trees, I hope after tonight's presentation that you all and the public get a comprehensive view
1 minute.
of who's doing what. Because right now, in the program we have right now, we've got 3 contractors doing various things. We've got ABM services, taking care of the beach lots, collecting the coinage there. We've got City of Long Beach collecting the coinage on Main Street. And then we've got a company called Data Ticket that actually processes the citations, et cetera. And those 3 contracts, I think, cost us about $250,000 in toto, plus or minus. So we have those 3 ongoing contracts. I'd like to know what's going to happen to those. Are those costs going to go up or down? And now we're adding, 4 other providers. So we're going to have at least 7 vendors/contractors involved. And it brings up the whole issue about coordinating all that, compatibility, et cetera. So I hope that you'll explore that further during the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing no one else, we'll move on to the next item, the city attorney's report.
Thank you, Mayor. Members of the council, prior to the meeting this evening, the city council met in closed session regarding the one item of personnel matter on personnel negotiations on the posted agenda. Councilmember Masalavat was absent. Council took no reportable action.
Thank you. Next, city manager's report.
No items tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. City council comments. We'll start with Councilmember Sosarczyk. If you're not ready, we can move to the next person.
I got my paper. Good evening. I just wanted to report that I attended the grand opening of the Dunn Edwards Paint Store. We have a new business that's up near the Ayers Hotel, and everyone was very excited, and it was a very fun event. They are happy to be in Seal Beach, and we're happy to have them. I attended the investiture of breakfast put on by Metropolitan Water District and the ACCOC. The update on that is that they have the Twin Tunnels project planned. It looks like, because the Central Valley's not really stepping into it, that it might be a 1 tunnel, but they're trying to move ahead to try to help bring especially overflow kind of water on the wet years down here to Southern California. So anyway, thank you very much.
the Cypress College. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Councilmember Moore?
Yes, I also went to the Americana, and it was nice to see so many Seal Beach people there. I went to the chili contest about a week ago on Main Street, and I really enjoyed going to each restaurant and trying the different chilies. I'd also been communicating with the police department and Brian Gray, clearing out the homeless encampments, and he's really done a great job. And I really appreciate the police effort in that area. Thanks.
Thank you. I also attended the Cypress College Americana Awards. And we recognize Steve Masoner, great asset to the city. It was a nice event, and we're proud to have him in our neighborhood and helping out with the beach cleanup. And that was it. Our next item is the council items. I guess there's no council items at this time. We'll move on to the consent calendar. Items on the consent calendar are considered to be routine and are enacted by a single motion, with the exception of items removed by council members. There were no items removed. Do we have a motion?
I'd like to move approval of the consent calendar, please.
Second?
Second?
Please vote. That's 4-0. Thank you. We'll have another public hearing. I guess there's no public hearing for this next item. Unfinished and continued business. We have the professional services agreement for parking equipment, technology, and services. Do you have a staff report for that?
Yes, Mayor, thank you. I'm going to turn this item over to Police Commander Steve Bowles, and I know he will most likely turn the item over from there to our parking project manager. Commander Bowles?
I'm not going to touch the microphone or the podium. For everyone here, they always say you're not supposed to go to work or go to school when you're sick, but I've been waiting 2 years for this night, and I'm not going to let it go by. I represent a part of a team, a parking project management team, that's worked very, very hard for this night and for us to be moving forward with our parking plan. I know many of you heard me speak about parking before. I'm not going to provide you with any more parking fatigue. Just know that all the vendors that we have chosen tonight are the best in the industry. And we have chosen each one of them to be a part of our team. Back in 2016, we came to you and the council approved us to move forward with 2 contracts. One with Parkion, which is a vendor we chose tonight who does the multi-space meters. And we also chose a company called New Park. At that time, as the speaker said in public comment, that company said they could be the one-stop solution. We could get rid of all of our other vendor contracts. But what we realized at New Park, the company who said they could perform all the duties that all these other vendors that we're talking about tonight could do, they just couldn't perform. And one thing when we realized looking into parking was, it's like if you have a car or something where something breaks, you want to be able to go, be able to find another part and put it into your system. If we went with one company and that company failed, we'd have hundreds of thousands of dollars lost. So what we've done is created a team of outstanding vendors to represent our parking team as we move forward. I'm going to turn this over to Julie Dixon. Julie's our parking project manager. She's run both of our town hall meetings that we've had. I know you've met her before. She's going to go into how we completed our pilot project, why we chose the companies that we have, and we look forward to answering any of your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. So again, I'm Julie Dixon. It's actually hopefully just really kind of a review tonight because you've all been so actively involved, as well as many of the community members that are here tonight from the stakeholder meeting. So my hope tonight is that this really is truly just a review. And I think, as everyone knows, this is really the first phase of the parking plan that we have for the city of Seal Beach. So there's definitely more to come. But some of the things that you have in front of you, again, Steve mentioned that there are a few vendor contracts that are in front of us. One of those items is to introduce the new smart meters to Main Street. So the Main Street parking lots will actually experience the new smart meters where you can actually pay with your credit card at the parking meter. We're actually introducing new pay stations, and we're going to go into these in more detail as we go through the slides for the beach lots. Also, we're actually going to be able to enhance enforcement throughout the city by utilizing LPR technology, which is license plate recognition technology, and we'll talk quite a bit about that. And then also another customer convenience, which is mobile payment, so that it will hopefully make it for to touch on. And we basically ran a pilot, and it ran at the end of summer from between July and into September, where we actually had 2 different vendors that brought their product to Seal Beach, and we ran the products for over 60 days, and we actually reached out to the community stakeholders and yourselves and asked everybody to go out and really utilize this experience and provide us with their feedback. Selected meter that we'll be moving forward with. That meter is also very prevalently positioned all throughout leader. Importantly about the single space meters is that, as you all know, the previous equipment, you could only pay with coins, and in fact a lot of our downtown merchants complain because people are always going in there and asking for quarters and things like that to try to make it so that they could extend their parking payments. And you can see that just in this brief trial period, we had over 60% utilization with people paying with their credit cards. And one of the other features that we heard from our parking enforcement staff was that it was very easy to enforce because the bright lights really make it clear with a flashing red light if the meter time is expired. Now, the parking vendor IPS also offers a sensor upgrade. It's an option that we've included in the contract, but it's not something that we're necessarily opting to proceed with at this time. There's a couple of values that come along with the meter, with the sensor, and that includes to be able to reset the time on the meter so that if a car pulls out, it zeroes out the meter, but it's not necessarily something that the team is actually pursuing at this time. And this is a great opportunity to really highlight the fact that this whole experience, this whole upgrade, this whole approach towards parking is really about compliance. It's really about trying to, improve the overall experience. This is not meant to be a revenue generator. And so we really want to emphasize the fact that this investment is really about the customer experience and how easy it is to find parking, how easy it is to pay for parking. And that's one of the reasons why we actually selected the single space smart meter that's there in the bottom right corner. The next part of this process is the pay stations. Now, the pay stations, the one that's on the left side of the pictures, that's the machines that are currently in the beach parking lots today. And one of the factors that we had to pursue is because the pay station is actually going to be expiring in March for what's called PCI compliance. PCI compliance has to do with the credit card authorization procedures and what is required in order to be able to process credit cards. So we knew we had to make a technology change or make a substantial investment in the existing hardware, and that's what led again to the pilot where we experimented with 3 different parking pay station vendors and got the feedback. And the Parking On Meter, which is the vendor that's on the right side, is an example of the pay station that was actually selected. And we've actually been able to work with the vendor very strategically to make sure that pending tonight's approval, that if it's selected and approved, then we'll actually have that infrastructure installed by March, because this is a really important factor. We want to make sure the equipment is in place in time for the spring break holidays, and again, have the ability to accept the credit card payments at those locations. Another nice feature about this, and this will lead into the license plate recognition technology, is that we're actually going to be transitioning the beach lots to what's called a pay-by-plate solution. So that factors, when people visit, they'll actually utilize their license plate as their permit number. And it actually simplifies the process whether you're paying by phone, which we'll talk about in a moment, or at the machine. But what it also does is it eliminates the ability for people to pass back the receipts. What you may or may not realize, it's a very prevalent issue in what's called a pay and display setup, which is what you had before, is that maybe I just came down to the beach, and I left by 10 a.m. I could hand my receipt to the next person and say, okay, free parking for you for the rest of the day. Or I could even sell my parking pass to somebody, and that's been known to happen when you have a pay and display setup. And so now it's basically associated with the license plate of the vehicle, so you can't pass back the receipts. So we mentioned license plate recognition technology, and this is also going to be really relevant because not only is it going to make our parking enforcement officers more effective and more efficient in the field, but it's also going to allow us to collect occupancy data That's really important when we start to talk about needs and improvements for our city streets when it comes to making permit rules or time limit rules. The data that we can actually collect from the license plate recognition technology can really help us make smart decisions in the future. But what it also has is this auto chalking feature. And the vendor that we've selected, which is called Genetec, their distributor that we'll be working with, we're contracted with PCS Mobile. The technology that they offer has a proprietary feature for chalking. So what we may all be accustomed to is the parking enforcement officer that goes and runs the chalk on the physical chalk on the tire. Well, one of the challenges, and we've heard this specifically on Main Street, is that some people may be known to go out and rub the chalk off the tire, or maybe just roll their tires back and forth, or maybe hopscotch to the next parking space. With the actual geolocation tools, with the auto chalking, you're actually going to be able to identify that vehicle and have photographic evidence that the vehicle didn't relocate. So again, this isn't meant to be a punitive solution, but what we really want to do is educate our people that are parking in Main Street especially, and also around the downtown community, that the parking regulations are there for a reason. We're looking for vehicle turnover, transitions, so that our commercial businesses can actually have the people, we can have the tables turning over in the restaurants, and it's not necessarily the employees or business owners who are parking on Main Street for 8 hours. So this particular tool will actually be able to help us with that compliance factor. The other item that's really key is permits, is that we can actually utilize the LPR technology so that we're prepared to actually manage the permit parking utilizing the LPR. What a lot of you don't realize is that this last December, we actually implemented some of the new permitting processes, and we had a lot of feedback from the community that it was much more efficient this year. Our hope for next year is that it'll also be more efficient. But this year was also the key where we started to capture the license plate information very specifically so that hopefully over this year, we'll be able to transition to this virtual permitting solution so that everything becomes plate-based. And it's going to be much easier to enforce so that your parking enforcement officers can actually drive the streets and monitor the license plates of the vehicle to indicate if it's a valid parking session or not a valid parking session. This will happen both for the permitted areas and also in the paid parking areas because those locations will be based on the license plate. Importantly as well, is that Genetec actually integrates with the law enforcement databases so that it can identify stolen vehicles or BOLs. That's all thresholds that the police department can set. It can also identify what are called scofflaws, people that have delinquent or unpaid parking citations. You can actually use the LPR technology to monitor and capture those particular violators as well. Now, I touched on this already, but mobile payment is basically another factor. It's another convenience that we've offered so that patrons can actually pay utilizing their phones. One of the nice features about mobile payment is that once you set up your account with the mobile application, you can park and just start a session with like literally the touch of the application. And so this is also a nice convenience because if you're at the beach parking lot, maybe I only intended to come for an hour, but you know, the waves are so great that I just want to extend my time. Without having to go back to the pay station, I can stay in my beach chair and actually extend the time. The important thing I always like to highlight about mobile payment is that whatever the business rule is or whatever the time limit is, you can set that requirement so that if the Main Street parking spaces are, for the parking lots are 2-hour time limits, you can't extend beyond those 2-hour time limits. But at the beach parking lots where you can park all day, you can basically extend to whatever that business rule is for that location. So this is not necessarily a get out of jail free card. I can't pay for 4 hours of parking in the Main Street lots, but what we always like to identify is whatever the business rule is for that parking location, the mobile payment provides that convenience. And this is something that, working with the vendor Passport that was selected for this particular solution, there's all sorts of really neat features that come along with this too. Marketing and branding and things that could be implemented like merchant validation programs, all sorts of neat bells and whistles that we're not starting off with all of that, but basically triggers that we can pull on as the program evolves and different features and functions that can come along with this, like special event rates, special event parking, all sorts of cool things that come with this, but again, not necessarily on day one. So we've had a lot of folks mention the fact that there are so many vendors, but one of the things that the commander mentioned was the fact that, having the, all-in-one package, We work with a number of municipalities that have actually invested in the all-in-one solution. And while that may work well for some agencies, there have also been a number of agencies that have been stuck with companies that have maybe not performed as well, and they've put all of their revenue and all of their parking operation in that one location, and it hasn't necessarily proved to be ideal. In this particular case, I really have to emphasize what the commander said is you truly do have best-in-class services, and I think that that's something that's really relevant. And the other factor for all of the solicitations that we've done and in all of the contract agreements that your city attorney has reviewed is that there are integration requirements with all of the technology providers. You've heard me talk about LPR, you've heard me talk about your permit system. What's really neat about this is that the fact that the vendors basically all communicate to each other, and it's all in the cloud. It's all happening in the back end. Your parking enforcement officer handhelds that are provided by Data Ticket can basically validate the license plate, can validate the payment parking session from the mobile payment, from the pay stations. It all ties in together. The LPR, all of the pieces overlap, and that's basically been one of the reasons what we've been working on in the background is making sure everything communicates and the checks and balances are all there, and that all of the data belongs to the city. That's also a really important factor that we went through with the city attorney on all of the agreements that we have in front of us. Currently, we have ABM in the city of Long Beach that are providing the support for the parking operation and the technology, and this is something that they'll be incorporated into the training programs that'll go on over the next couple of months, and it's something that we really have to evaluate in terms of the long term. As we're putting the technology, we'll look at solicitations for potential future support agreements for all of this technology as well. But that all ties into the phase 2 part of it. The fact of the matter is, there's a lot of stuff up there on the board, and it took us a little bit of time to get to this point. We ran a number of solicitations, we ran the technology pilots, and we have to make sure that we do this incrementally, because if we do everything at one time, it really becomes overwhelming, not only for staff, but also for the community. The fact is, we need to basically make sure that we take this from a very approachable, incremental implementation so that the community is also prepared for this. There's a whole public outreach campaign, there's a whole, messaging part of this process with the kickoff, because we want to make sure that everybody understands how the technology works. We want them to understand when it's being implemented, and that all comes after tonight, depending on how everything moves forward, and there will be that whole public outreach component of it. As many of you are aware, because we've had a couple of stakeholder meetings, just some of the high-level items that have come out of the meetings in regards to some of the public concerns. We've definitely tried to incorporate as much as we could possibly into this initial technology solicitation and what we're presenting tonight, but we do have a plan to come back to the public in April and be able to talk about the next phase of their approach, again, subject to tonight's approval, being able to then talk about the implementation, the impacts, and then let's start to talk about the parking strategies to really dig in on some of the challenges that we've heard from the stakeholders. A lot of the issues that we've had as well come back to the municipal ordinances, and that's something that we've actually been working with city staff on as well, is that we're going to propose some improvements to the municipal ordinances to help us deal with and manage some of the parking challenges. So that's coming in the next phase, as well as some of the other issues in managing this as well. And in regards to the timeline, the implementation, I mentioned that the parking on pay stations will be installed in March. Overall, this whole parking technology solution for everything that you see in front of you, we're really looking at about a 60-day implementation process from the notice to proceed. So let's just assume that after tonight, if everything goes well, we have about a 2-week contracting signature standpoint. So we're really probably looking at it about March 1. The hope is that everything that you see in front of you for all of the vendor agreements, we should be implemented within 60 days of that notice to proceed date. So, and I feel very comfortable with all the technology providers because we've been working so closely with them. This is just a sample of some of the information that we've shared with the stakeholders in regards to the different elements of the different phases. And I mentioned the next phase is really when we start to talk about policy. We needed to get all of the equipment ordered and get that part of the process going. And now we really want to dig in on different things like the Uber and Lyft, like Vicki was mentioning earlier, ways that we can address and improve their drop-offs and looking at, safety issues of the locations for passenger loading and unloading, looking at some of the branding and the signage of how we communicate where people should park and how they can find available parking. And then that leads into, some of the more longer term aspects of looking at the issues of where to expand parking to, as well as looking at the residential parking permit programs as well. But those are all things that we'll tackle in the next phases. And with that, any questions?
Yes, I believe we have many questions. I'll start with anyone who wants to
Could you
start
start with me, because I am going to need to
Yeah.
leave?
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. First of all, Julie, it's been a real pleasure having you. I just want you to know you run a great meeting.
Oh, thank you.
When I grow up, I want to be just like you, okay?
Thank you.
'Cause
That's very
you've
flattering.
done a great job.
Thank you.
You've also done a great job of listening to everyone. So I have a few questions here, and I apologize. I need to get home tonight. I have something I need to take care of, but I have a few questions that I'm in mid-year budget, that's why. Sorry, paper shuffling. The signage, I see you have that in Phase 2, is that correct? Did I get that right?
Yes.
On the signage? I'm getting a lot of complaints about signage that can't be read, so do you know when we'll get that signage up?
So right now, we've actually done an on-street assessment and audit of the curbs and the signs. And I know that, I'm just going to look over my shoulder to the commander, because I know that he's submitted some requests to engineering. Have we any feedback on any requests yet? So I can tell you that it's in progress. We're also working on, from the last stakeholder meeting, we're about to do an audit of the alleys as well, because we had some very specific
Right,
feedback
right.
on that. But I can tell you that there have been some requests submitted in regards to some signage improvements and changes as well. So I will say it's in process, and we'll look to get you an update on it. Make sure that if we're going to make any changes or request changes to the municipal code, and then from there tackle, so that we go to Coastal Commission comprehensively with everything at one fell swoop. So anything that we need to basically go to them. So I would say that post municipal code requests to you, so that way if we have anything, we have to take to Coastal Commission as a result of that, but also comprehensively as of any other issues that we need to tackle with them.
What about our neighbors that are asking for relief for the 1 hour on their sides when the rest of the town has them? Nothing has been done for them?
Let me just turn over to Vicky and see if I'm, nothing at this point.
Okay, I've promised somebody that I would work on that since I was on the planning commission.
Okay.
I'm termed out.
Okay, I'm making
Like
a
to see
note.
if we could get that done.
Okay,
Also on the license plate recognition, I think we should start right now by letting people know that that'll include the 72 hours rule, which is a California code. Many, many, many people in our town do not know we have a 72-hour rule because it's never applied to them, and it'll apply to them just as soon as these license plate readers start going around. So other than that, I apologize that I need to leave. Julie, you've done a really great job, and you are a terrific leader of public meetings. So
Well, thank
thank
you.
you very much.
we wouldn't be here without the team, so thank you for that.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councilmember Moore?
Hi.
You're excused, thank you. You need to vote?
Yeah, I'd just like to reiterate that you did a great job here, and I like how you had the different vendors as a test, and that we were able to look at each of them, and so I really like the approach. I had a few questions on the meters on the beach. There's only one that accepts dollars. Could you explain why you decided that?
Yes, well, if it was my preference, there would be none that took dollars, and the one reason why is because it's a tremendous maintenance issue. It costs a lot of money to support those meters because of the jams and the issues of bad currency bills, wet bills, you name it. But after talking with staff, the recommendation, especially to support the clientele, especially by the pier, was to put at least one, what's called a bill note acceptor, by the pier and look at the utilization, and we'll monitor it very closely. We do have the option, if it becomes a need for the community, that we can always upgrade the other equipment. But I can tell you from experience that we've worked with very popular tourist destinations where we've eliminated the bill note acceptors, and it has not been an issue at all, especially with the utilization of mobile payment and the fact that you can still pay by coin. But the fact is that we wanted to make sure that there was at least one option available, and we chose to have it by the pier location to really try to support those constituents that might want to utilize bills. But it is a significant maintenance issue, and most of the technology providers recommend against putting them in because it's such a challenge.
Will there be some signs on the other ones where to go to the dollar?
We were just speaking about that today, and we're definitely going to work on a revamp of the signage throughout the beach lots, and we'll make sure that it's identified that the meters where you can pay with bills.
Okay.
Just one quick interruption. We'll need to vote to
Well, he needs
excuse.
to get his questions answered before he can vote, right?
Well, we have more questions after him, so.
Oh, we do.
Do you want to wait till all of them? Or you want to be excused now?
Well, how much longer do you think it's?
Oh, just a couple minutes.
And then I have questions, and I think she has.
Okay.
So do you want to just be excused now?
I'll just,
Okay.
okay, thanks, sorry.
Do you have a motion?
Oh, you want to vote before?
But that's, do we have to vote for Councilmember Deaton to be excused? Do we need a vote for that? Or she could just leave.
She doesn't.
Okay.
She doesn't need to stay for the vote if she needs to leave.
Oh, for the, oh,
I'm sorry.
Will there be a ability to see available spots like in the future?
So the intention, and this really goes into kind of that signage program, is that to evaluate the technology to be able to provide the information for available parking. Right now, we don't have the infrastructure in the beach lots, but it's something that we've definitely talked about. And in fact, one of the items that's included as an optional service in the Genetec contract is, for the LPR contract, is actually to incorporate cameras that can also provide the counts for those parking spaces as well. So it's not part of this phase one, but if that's something that the city's interested in pursuing, there's between the Genetec contract as well as some other technology providers that we can basically consider for those locations as well.
And would they interface with an app where you could see, oh, here's the available spots?
Absolutely. They can definitely tie into a lot of the publicly available apps as well, and it's something that we've definitely talked about. It just wasn't as high on the priority list.
Okay. And in your experience with where you've implemented similar meters, has it improved the businesses in that area, or like what have the results been financially?
Sure. So the real effect comes in, it's actually not really tied to the equipment. It's usually tied to the enforcement. Typically, you see an uptick because of the convenience of the credit card payments, but you have to make sure that you staff the compliance factor as equitably as you put the new technology out there. In my experience, we've always seen an uptick in revenue as a result of the smart meters, the ability to pay with credit cards, and providing all the customer conveniences. But you always have to make sure that you sustain the level of enforcement so that people understand that they can't just, cut corners or not pay. They have to know that there's a penalty if you don't pay for the parking or pay for the experience. So in general, again, we've seen an increase in revenue, but one of the factors, I have to emphasize is that this particular project is really about compliance and really about customer service and improving the overall. It wasn't about revenue generation, but sustainable costs. We absolutely anticipate that.
Okay. And what's the lifespan of these meters?
So you're typically estimating about 7 years with proper maintenance. That's been about, give or take, the lifespan. In some cases, depending on weather conditions and being so close to the beach community, maybe about 5 years too, but it really goes into the preventative maintenance program. And that's one of the reasons why when we talk about the ABM agreement and the City of Long Beach agreement, the proper training of those staff and making sure that we have a very comprehensive preventative maintenance program is really, really key to the longevity of that equipment. The same goes for the LPR equipment. It really goes into kind of the care and feeding of the infrastructure and making sure that we're, taking care of it and it's not subject to, excessive abuse.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Next.
I think you may have answered some of my questions. It had to do with, also the variety of vendors up there. And if you've got a handheld and citation reader in this lot, is that the same citation reader that can be used on the street and that sort of thing? They also talk about this is their own mobile person or vendor, and but I gathered that they accept third party, and just wondering if it's all gonna go smoothly together, I guess is my worry. So.
It's all going to talk to each other. What's really important is the drivers, in order to participate in Seal Beach, was that the vendors acknowledged and accepted the fact that they're going to have to play nicely together as the key. And it's actually written into our contracts as well. It's called an API. The computer term is how the data transmits to the other systems. And so a great example is Parkeon is your pay station. And so what ends up happening is Parkeon actually has to speak to the LPR vendor, so the actual vehicle devices, and it also has to speak to Data Ticket because you're handheld enforcement devices. But now, I'm just going to show you this, just the permit data that comes out of Data Ticket that handles the residential parking passes.
Okay.
That has to speak to Genetec for the LPR technology as well.
Okay.
So that way that all ties in together. And so if I started drawing lines between all of the systems, there would be overlap and lines that touched basically all of the solutions. And the neat thing too is that your two support vendors in the bottom right corner, they actually have lines into all of the technology that they touch as well, because they'll be handling the maintenance and they'll get the alerts for the technology as well. And that's the one really big advantage to what we're talking about, all this technology. It's all smart technology, and the best thing about the smart technology is that single space parking meter, if somebody jams some cotton in it, or there's, whatever happens, it just, something goes haywire, somebody jams a quarter in there, the meter will actually send an alert to your maintenance staff that says, hey, help me, I'm not working correctly right now. And that's something that really, when you talk about preventative maintenance, and that's why when you ask about the revenue and the increases, you can anticipate that that's really where your value comes, is because the system is telling you when it's not working properly, unlike waiting for a technician to come out and respond to it. So, and that's all part of that tie-in, why in the next phase, we're going to look at the support agreements to support all this equipment to make sure that we have the responsive, proactive responses that we need to handle and make sure the equipment stays up as well.
And it looked like most of the support for these systems are all in Southern California anyway, so.
Exactly. In fact, that is absolutely the case. One of the real advantages we have, and I have to highlight, because Data Ticket was actually one of your existing vendors, and I just want to emphasize, and their contract isn't up here tonight because that one was already handled, but we were actually able to leverage your Data Ticket contract and take some existing triggers that were in that contract and actually expand upon those. And that's how we ended up with the advanced permit system that we actually had when we did permit sales back in December. That's a direct result of Data Ticket, who was based in Newport Beach, but I think they just moved their office to Irvine. But very locally based, basically all of the vendors up there have a local presence, so.
Okay. Let's see, what else? I had another question. A sec. So this would allow, when we have large special events in town, we have VIP special guests come in, you could give them a code for the lot? Is that something that's ahead? Because sometimes it's like, where are we going to have these people park and that kind of thing. So
you're going in the right direction. Okay. So technically, yes. So the system actually can be set up so that when I talked about merchant validation, that's something that you can actually give people a coupon code, things like that can actually be used at the meters. We're not setting that up on day one, but you have those bells and whistles to be able to take advantage of as well. The only caveat I have to say about that, if it's a set aside where the parking is blocked off, that's one thing. The biggest challenge you have is what they call parking reservation systems, where you would never want to do something like that in your beach lots because you don't have gate controls and you'd have people probably, going to battle over parking spaces.
Okay.
You know what I mean? But if you have gate controls, which I'm not suggesting, but I just want to highlight that's the one difference about parking reservations. But the coupon codes and things like that, the system will absolutely let you do that.
Okay, I think that's all for now.
Thank you. I have a couple questions. You answered most of them about the interfacing with all the systems. That's really good. Is a large team approach typical in most of these type scenarios in beach cities and stuff like that, where you have all these different companies doing different things?
You know what, I have to say it is, especially now. We had a few years ago where we had the vendors that were providing the turnkey one-stop shop solutions. And in one of those cases, there was a company that went bankrupt about 3-4 years ago, and we're dealing with the aftermaths of those programs right now because we had cities that invested their entire parking operation. Everything that you see on this wall was in one vendor solution, and the city of San Leandro is just coming out from under that. They haven't had a paid parking operation for about 2 years right now, so that's been a real challenge. The key about this, I think, that's strategic is the fact that, again, it's the best in class, but the change in our industry that's happened over these last couple of years is that whole playing nice with others. What they've learned is that with the advancement of smart cities and the direction that communities are going and municipalities are, if they want to survive, they have to basically integrate with each other and they have to communicate with each other. And that's something the walls are kind of coming down over the last few years because of that. We have really big players coming in the industry with the smart city solutions. So these vendors all know that if they want to survive it, they need to basically participate in it. So I think that you're seeing this very comparably across the board.
Okay, just for clarity, we're not talking about meters on Main Street.
No, we are not.
No meters. These are meters in the parking lots adjacent.
It's replacement of, it's a change for change. So where you have existing infrastructure, it's a swap of the matching infrastructure. So single space for single space.
I know that,
Pay
but I
station
just
for
want to
pay
make sure the
station.
public knows that.
Yeah.
And then, what percent is the bill pay notification? Do you know offhand? Like, is that a big percentage of paying?
With the actual currency bills for
Yeah,
the
is
bill
there a
note acceptors, you know what, it actually varies by community, but I can say that it really depends on, what it really depends on is what the rate structure is. And so it does vary by geography and it varies by what the actual rate structure is. If the rate is, and I'm not saying this is your rate, but if the rate is $20, it's a very easy way for people that have $20 on them to just feed that meter in, versus if the rate is $12, so that's why there's a bunch of factors that go into that. But I will tell you that we will monitor it very closely upon installation, because like I said, we have the option to add bill note acceptors if we need to, and we'll definitely pay really close attention to the utilization.
Okay, so Long Beach would still need to be involved, I guess, because there still is a bill pay notification.
For now, the intention for us is the next phase is to evaluate the services, and our plan is to run a solicitation for parking operations support, and we'll come back to you with any recommendations associated with that.
Okay. So, like a sample scenario, in the past, I'm not a techie. I used to get like a little ticket, put my money in, get a ticket. I could see right there was, 12 to 2, for example. I go to the beach, I know it says 2 o'clock. Now, if I put my license plate number in there, I pay the amount, whatever it is, how do I get the notification, or how do I know if I don't have a smartphone, I don't have a watch, how do I know? I have to go run, I can't even run back to the meter because it's not a meter. It's just a parking stall. How do I get that if I'm not a tech savvy person, or I don't have a phone or
Sure.
something
So
like
if you'll enter your license plate, and there can be the option to print a receipt, so that you'll have all of that information on the receipt. And a receipt can be optional or it can be required, however the city wants to set it up. A lot of cities are going green, so they like to give the option to customers. But I can say very clearly on the display screen, which, and the option that we presented is a color screen, so that it should be very vibrant and very clear to the user. It will very clearly state on the screen when you've entered in your plate and made your payment. It will very clearly tell you your session expires at whatever time it is. So it is very clear on the screen, and you will have the option to print a receipt if that's something that the city wants to do.
Okay. Well, I know that's an issue with people. And then the sunlight glare issue is always a big issue with the direction that the the big box meters are facing. So I know you'll look at that.
We'll look at that during the installation for
closely.
sure.
Yeah, I was able to attend the stakeholders engagements, and I thought it was very well handled. And I know you have a great team with, Commander Bowles and the city staff, so
For sure.
thank you for all of that. I have no further questions. You have another one?
Yeah, I had another one. And I wanted to thank you also for the meeting, and I appreciate the parking tour. That was very, very helpful to see what it was, and feel confident that we've looked at all and given it all a fair chance. I just wanted to ask about, it was talking in the staff report about paying for your citations or paying for your fines. I wanted to know if this is going to be possible, and also is that going to help us out over our present situation?
So you'll have the option, so this is where we start to talk about how things talk to each other. We can set it up so that on the mobile payment, you could actually pay your parking citation. So that's another convenience. But then with Data Ticket, you can basically pay your tickets online as well. So there's a lot of customer conveniences that come along with that too. So I think that what you're going to see with this array of vendors is that as many times as we can make it as easy as possible for the customer to utilize the system, whether it be to make a payment, whether it be to verify their time, whatever the service is, that's what a lot of the amenities that come along with these vendor features are. It's very customer-centric, very customer, friendly, so that, again, it's all about, we talk about the parking experience. We want it to be a positive one, and that's why what the council member said about the signage, that's a big part of our next phase, is that we know that we have to tackle the signage as well so that we can help people find parking even easier as well, so.
Okay, but this will be fairly instant so that you don't have to wait days or something?
You can,
could just-
this is, when we talk about real time, that's one of the definitions for us of real time is that, not that we all want to get parking tickets, but if I get a parking ticket, I could literally pay it upon receipt because the ticket is in the system. There's no lag time between my receipt of a parking ticket and my ability to pay it. So that should help with collections as well.
One more question. Some of these systems, I'm not sure if it was what we have or if it was an added service, but said that you could get possibly a text that you're going to expire in 5 minutes or whatever it is. Is that available too?
Yes. So your Passport mobile payment, it's all programmable so that when let's just say I thought I was just going to run in for an hour and I only bought an hour worth of time, it will send you an alert that says you have the ability to extend your time. You can buy an additional hour and it'll give you the option. Just like what I say if I was sitting on the beach, I can do that too because I was like, oh, it's time to basically end as well.
Okay. Thank you very much.
No problem.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have a motion for Resolution 1, 2, 3, and 4?
Is it all? Do we have to do these separately or
No, you can take one motion on all.
one motion at a time?
What's your pleasure?
Okay. let me
Motion
see.
to approve item E.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Please vote. Motion carries 3-0. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, I guess there's no new business, and at
We
this...
have to do each one separate. That was the first one. Or?
No, that was for all of item E.
That was for all of them.
That's
Okay.
Okay. Next item is new business. There's no new business items. We will adjourn the city council meeting to Monday, February 26, 2018 at 5:30 PM to meet in closed session if deemed necessary. We now have to convene for special successor agency matters. We'll call this meeting to order, and then council roll call.
Chair Verapapa,
Here?
Member Moore,
Here.
Member Sistarsik,
Here.
Members Deaton and Masalavat are absent.
Okay, we'll open it up to oral communications. Do I need to read all that again?
You don't have
Okay.
to read it. You don't have to read it all again.
Do we have any oral comments at this time? Seeing none, we'll move to the consent calendar. Items on the consent calendar are considered to be routine and are enacted by a single motion with the exception of items removed by